Good evening. Welcome once again, and thank you for joining us on today's edition of the Economic Forum Show. I am YUSUF, and today we are joined with our regular guest, our economic professor, Professor MOHAMMED Abbas EL-KHAMIS. Watch us live this and every Monday on our Facebook page at YUSUF TV. But unfortunately, today, due to yesterday's internet connectivity, we are bringing you this show live today on Tuesday. Stay tuned, like, share, and leave your comments at the comment section below. Today on the show, we are going to hold discussions on restoring macroeconomic stability and building resilience. In this edition, we are going to look at the path beyond Ghana's debt restructuring and IMF support. Leave your comments and questions in the comment section, as today we will engage with our economic professor, Professor Abbas Mohammed, so that he will also share his insight with us on the show. Professor, welcome to the show.
Thank you and welcome, dear listeners. Sorry about yesterday and the internet connectivity.
Yeah. Professor, we do really appreciate your time and contribution and how you actually enlighten our viewers on economic issues, specifically regarding to Ghana's economy. Professor, today we are going to talk about restoring macroeconomic stability and building resilience, and the path beyond Ghana's debt restructuring and IMF support. First of all, what led to Ghana's current macroeconomic instability and the need for debt restructuring?
Once again, thank you, dear listeners. Thank you, Walkia TV, for always being the source of basic understanding of our economy. It is with profound sense of purpose and indeed a deep love for our nation that I stand before you today. We gather not to merely discuss economic indicators, but we are going to confront a pivotal moment in Ghana's history, a moment that invigorated our recent successes, demands our collective courage and unwavering commitment, and a shared vision for a future defined by prosperity, stability, and enduring resilience. For the past few years, the economic landscape of Ghana, like many nations globally, has navigated turbulent waters. We've witnessed firsthand the struggles of inflation eroding the purchasing power, the cedi's depreciation testing our resolve, and a heavy burden of our public debt, casting a long shadow over our national aspirations. These were not mere statistics. They were realities that touch every home, every market stall, and every aspiring entrepreneur. I want us to look at the facts and not to dwell in the past difficulties, but to appreciate the journey we've undertaken. Ghana's public debt to GDP ratio had soared past 100% during Akufo-Addo administration, and inflation surged to historic heights. The city faced unprecedented pressure impacting the trade and investment. The COVID-19 pandemic and geopolitical shocks at the time had exposed the vulnerabilities in the system, which also highlighted our resilience and reliance on commodity exports and structural inefficiencies. However, the narrative has fundamentally shifted. As we stand here today, we are here to herald a significant and tangible turnaround. In recent months, we've witnessed a remarkable resurgence of the city, appreciating as much as 30% against the US dollar in the first half of 2025. This is not a fleeting phenomenon, but a powerful indicator of renewed market confidence. Inflation, which once soared, has been tamed moderately, significantly, from 23% in January to 18.4% in May of 2025. This positive trajectory is a direct testament to the determined and coordinated efforts of the Mahama administration, signaling a new chapter of economic stability for our beloved nation. It is with it is within this crucible of past challenges that Ghana embarked on a crucial journey, a comprehensive debt restructuring exercise, and seeking the support from the International Monetary Fund. These were not choices that were made lightly, I suppose, but rather a recognition that immediate decisive action was required to avert a deeper crisis and restore order in the system. The debt restructuring, while demanding the shared sacrifice from bondholders, as we saw, was meticulously designed to place our national finances on a sustainable footing. It has begun to reduce the heavy burden of interest payments, freeing up vital resources that can now be strategically channeled into productive sectors of our economy. Concurrently, the engagement with the IMF culminated into a 3 billion extended credit facility program provided not just a crucial financial support, but also a credible framework for our robust reforms. This program was built on pillars of fiscal consolidation, monetary policy tightening to combat inflation, and structural reforms that has proven to be vital lifeline. It's been instrumental in rekindling the confidence among international partners and investors, which has laid the fundamental, essential groundwork for positive shifts we are now witnessing and celebrating. But let us be unequivocally clear. The fact that the debt restructuring and IMF program are not the ultimate destination. They are critical waypoints on a much longer, more arduous, yet infinitely more rewarding journey towards true national prosperity. They've provided the necessary stability to pivot from crisis management to strategic long-term development. The truth or the true path to Ghana's enduring prosperity lies in accumulating cultivating deep structural resilience. A path now powerfully driven by the proactive and deliberate measures of the current administration. So what does the path beyond entail, or it looks like, especially in the inspiring moment we are currently witnessing? Number one, unwavering fiscal discipline and aggressive revenue mobilization is going to be the ticket to go into the next phase. This must be the bedrock of our current positive trajectory. The Mohammed administration has demonstrated an unwavering commitment to sound political financial management, where we've seen a decisive implementation of key reforms, including the amendment to Public Financial Management and Procurement Acts, the operationalization of a new fiscal compliance framework, and undertaking a comprehensive audit. We've seen a rigorous payroll cleanup exercise that's underway, even though we haven't seen the results yet, which has projected to save the public purse substantial amounts annually, alongside the introduction of a digital treasury dashboard for real-time tracking of public funds, which is yet to be seen. These measures are not just talk. They are concrete actions designed to curb reckless spending, drastically reduce inefficiencies, and instill strict budget discipline across all government sectors. This will directly contribute to city strength and uh, inflation decline.
Okay.
So a compelling case study to what we are witnessing in Ghana is to look at what Rwanda did.
Okay.
Rwanda, despite their tragic past, when they went through the genocide period, has demonstrated a remarkable fiscal prudence and efficient revenue mobilization, building a stable economic foundation that has attracted significant investment and fostered sustained growth. They proved that with strong political will, domestic resources can drive development. So we yet to see that in Ghana. Number two, bold structural reforms. Our state-owned enterprises must transition from being drains on the national purse to becoming engines of growth. We've seen what is happening to Electricity Company of Ghana,
Yeah.
where it has been a source of draining of our resources. So we have to change the narratives. And this will require courageous reforms, fostering efficiency, accountability, and profitability. There's no theory that tells you that state-owned enterprises cannot be profitable. We saw that in Botswana. As the administrations enhance oversight of the SUEs actively, we must aim to achieve profitability even within the SOEs. Furthermore, streamlining our public sector, enhancing service delivery, and reducing bureaucracy are paramount to improving the ease of doing business and fostering private sector dynamism. Then we have to go to the third step, which is to diversify the economy.
Okay.
Our historical reliance on raw material exports leaves us very vulnerable to global price fluctuations.
Okay.
You can see what's happening to the oil, and
Yeah.
so it will translate to the fuel that we consume. Why
Mm.
are we worried? It's because we don't refine the oil in Ghana. So any external shocks or any external disturbances like we witnessed between Russia, what do you call it, Israel and Iran, can have
Yeah.
an implication on our economy. So
Yeah.
we must aggressively pursue value addition, industrialization, and
Mm.
diversification into a non-traditional export and services, investing in technology, innovation, and digital economy, which will offer immense potential for us.
Mm.
So we should consider the success of a country like Vietnam, which transformed from agrarian economy to a manufacturing powerhouse by strategically investing in infrastructure,
Mm.
education, and creating an attractive environment for foreign direct investment in diverse sectors like electronics and textiles. When they started, they were agrarian economy. Now they make phones in Vietnam. This is a country that has emerged from war. So when
Mm.
you look at the history of these countries, I gave you Rwanda, I gave you Vietnam, look at the history of what they went through, and they emerged to be the powerhouse of innovation. What
Mm.
excuse does Ghana have? We don't have
Yeah.
a
And
history like that.
yeah. Yeah.
We've been peaceful for how many years? And yet we have nothing to show for our peaceful coexistence because
Mm.
we are, it looks like we are afraid to venture into diversifying the economy. The reason why I say that is when I look at our research and development, percentage on the budget, 0.3%, that's
Mm.
hopefully inadequate for us to move to the next level.
Okay.
If we really intend to move to the next level, then we must look at diversifying the economy, even on the
Okay.
background of a peaceful coexistence. So
Mm.
we have to be able to attract a retail investment, both domestic and foreign investment. So the
Okay.
current macroeconomic stability that we have, particularly the city's appreciation and
Mm.
improved sentiment among the citizens, is already having a tangible impact where investors are confident and new
Okay.
opportunities are beginning to open in the businesses. But we
Okay.
must continue to cultivate a predictable, transparent, and supportive regulatory environment,
Mm.
ensuring the protection of our property rights, upholding the rule of law, and fostering the skilled workforce. And the fourth, before the final, is investing in our human capital and social protection.
Okay.
Ultimately, our greatest asset is you and I, the human capital, is the
Yeah.
people. Investing in quality education,
Mm.
education that's relevant to the times, not the education that we inherited, education that will meet the needs of today. Healthcare and skills development, that is
Mm.
not, that should not be looked at as an expense. This is the most critical investment we can ever make. So we need a robust social protection programs also to ensure that we have a cushion that the most vulnerable amongst us will be able to lie on until adjustment is necessary to move on to the next level. So
Okay.
finally,
Mm.
institutions is where we really need to wrap things up with. So finally, we need to strengthen our institutions and governance,
Mm.
all right, and the relentless fight against corruption.
Okay.
Corruption has shown in Africa to be a corrosive force that
Mm.
undermines our economic progress
Yeah.
and erodes our public trust. On this front, I give the Mahama administration a lot of credit for taking robust and decisive steps.
Mm.
Uh, they have a preparatory team of the Operation Recover Olu, the ORO, which was assembled even before assuming office, which is credible,
Yeah.
specifically tasked with gathering intelligence and laying the groundwork for reclaiming an estimated $21 billion in alleged stolen state resources from previous administration. We yet to
Mm.
see the 21 billion dollars. So
Yeah.
this is a bold initiative that has since sent a clear message that accountability is paramount. So as
Okay.
we look at that, we need a firmer, and then furthermore, they instituted a code of conduct all right, that has been launched for all appointees,
Mm.
instituting a punitive measures, including automatic removal for engaging in corrupt practices.
Okay.
These relentless efforts, combined with strengthening anti-corruption institutions and enhancing judicial independence, are
Mm.
vital for ensuring transparency and
Okay.
rebuilding trust at all levels of governance. So, to
Okay.
answer your question, Ghana's macroeconomic instability stemmed from soaring public debt, which passed 100%, surging inflation and cities depreciation, which means
Mm.
that by the happenings of COVID-19 and the external shocks, it exposed our reliance on commodity exports, strained our fiscal discipline, and structural inefficiency. So
Mm.
all of these necessitated the need for us to restructure our debt. So
Okay.
it's the fundamentals in the economy that were exposed, which led to our debt to GDP ratio passing 100%, which in simple terms for the layman means that for any gains we're going to have in GDP, should we pay our debt, we won't have nothing to work with. That's
Mm.
why it's necessary for us to restructure the debt. Yes.
Okay, Professor, thank you very much for your insight and explanations on the topic. We do really appreciate it. Professor, you did mention about Vietnam and Ethiopia,
Rwanda.
Rwanda. Yeah. So, I mean, when we look at Germany and Japan, also came out of a war, World War II, but now they have emerged as one of the highly developed and technological hub. Professor, Ghana as a nation, we have been going to IMF for loan, World Bank. What are the key objectives of Ghana's agreement with the IMF? Because practically, we are not necessarily seeing the improvement or the development that we assume we will achieve by going for these loans. So, what are the objectives in the Ghana's agreement with the IMF?
The objective, as on paper, is number one to help us have a physical discipline on how we manage our money, right? So,
Mm,
for example, the key objectives of Ghana's agreement with the IMF through the 3 billion extended credit facility, the recent one, was one, fiscal consolidation, two, monetary policy tightening to combat inflation, and
mm,
three, structural reforms to enhance resilience. So these are the three key objectives. So what it wanted to achieve was to restore order into our macroeconomic environment and rekindle confidence among international partners and investors. What we have to remember is when these institutions come to help us, their aim is to be able to establish an environment where their own partners, so-called investors, will be
mm,
able to participate in our economy and walk away with profit. So anytime we seem to be all over the place, like in Akufo-Addo's administration, where we take
mm,
monies and we don't do projects, there was a lot of corruption everywhere. So they needed to bring sanity in the system that
mm.
things can be cleaned up a little bit. And that's why they brought in the money to make sure that we have that stability. But the goal always is to protect their partners and investors.
Mm.
So the reason why it hasn't benefited us is because they're not looking at the Ghanaian citizen. I did make this statement the last time. If
Yeah.
you look at each of the initiatives that we've pursued, the Ghanaian citizen is not the focus, it's the international partners and investors.
Mm,
So when you have a project or a program like that, then you are not serving the customer. The customer is supposed to be the Ghanaian citizen. So when the Ghanaian citizen is not your customer, as IMF is the investors and partners that are your customer, then Ghana is not doing its job because Ghana's job should be the Ghanaian citizen. So that is why the disconnect is always happening. You see the program, it looks good on paper, but to what gains? Who gains from it? All right, it's always the international customer that's. But the good thing about what they do is it brings sanity. Like right now, the current administration was
mm.
mandated to clean up the mess in the system under the IMF loan facility. So
Okay.
that led to them not spending unnecessarily, which is something we should have done with IMF anyway. All right. If we care about each other, then we don't need IMF to tell us that we should be prudent on what we spend money on. All right. So why is IMF telling us? It's because we fail to live to expectation as people and people
Mm.
that care for each other. If we care
Yeah.
for each other to drive our agenda forward, 3 billion is nothing. What IMF is giving us 3 billion is nothing. If you look at structuring the gold refinery, for example, should we pursue gold refinery? I told you we had $5 billion yearly to our revenue. So what is 3 billion then? So we don't need IMF.
Yeah.
If we do the job on the other side, we get 5 billion. Why do we depend on 3 billion for us to follow some restrictions and guidelines? We don't need the guidelines. The guidelines are good by themselves, but we can do it ourselves if we are serious and care for each other.
Yeah.
That's the problem. It's because
Okay.
we always fail to live up to human responsibility for each other. That led to this institution coming to tell us that look at you guys are stupid. You're not doing what you're supposed to do. We need you to do A, B, and C. And A, B, and C and D are things we should be doing anyway. We don't need IMF to tell us to be disciplined. We don't need IMF to tell us that you should follow through on your project. When you take money, do what you're supposed to do. That we can
Mm.
run state-owned enterprises at a profit. We can do all of this without
Yeah.
IMF telling us that. So it's when we fail to live up to our own expectations that these institutions will come with their little money and give us condition. 3 billion, we can get 5 billion on the other side if we work in the gold refinery industry. We can
Mm.
add $5 billion to our revenue just by refining gold. Why can we do that instead of taking 3 billion? Because we always want the easy way out. That's what it appears in Ghana. Instead of
Mm.
working to earn the money, we rather go to IMF cup in hand and take 3 billion. We didn't work for it, only to add to the debt of the next generation. Why? Because it's the easy way.
Yeah. Professor, yeah, this is a valid point because all of these objectives are not achievable without citizen interest. Professor, how has the debt restructuring process impacted public and private sectors' confidence in the economy?
The restructuring, as you can see today, has brought in a lot of confidence in the system. All right. The debt restructuring, though demanding sacrifices like we did the first half of 2025, where we didn't pursue any development agenda, serious development agenda, to be honest.
Yeah. Mm.
When the Mohammed administration took over, they can hardly spend anything. So all they were doing was to clean up the mess and tighten the belt and try to recover as much of the loot as possible. So it put the financial finances on sustainable footing.
Mm.
And this has been instrumental in rekindling the confidence among international partners and investors. Everybody feels good about Ghana right now simply because of
Yeah.
that. And then with the appreciation of city, that kind of helped that confidence level in the system. So the recent remarkable resurgence of the city and the moderation of inflation are tangible signs of renewed market confidence. So that will
Mm.
allow people and private sector to begin participating in the economy. So that is very, very important. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. What we did or what we're doing right now is something that we should have done in the first place. So it's just good that we have a leader that wants to do the right thing. And I give him a
Mm.
lot of credit for that because we were here some few years ago and we didn't have that much confidence in the system.
Yeah.
So for us to get here, we have to give credit where credit is due. So the
Mhm.
Mohammed administration has done well. They've demonstrated that we can get some confidence back in the system, but we have to move a step further.
Yeah. Yeah, Professor, a couple of weeks ago, China had an agreement with us. There was some kind of a free, zero tariffs on Ghana's import and export to China, what I think is a good thing. Professor, how sustainable is the current macroeconomic framework introduced under the IMF program? How sustainable it is? You have mentioned the objectives, but how sustainable it is? Is it achievable?
It's achievable if we can use that as a platform to grow. That's what I'm saying. So now that we've achieved the confidence, we have, the foundation in terms of
Mm.
financial discipline. The next question is, should we start pursuing long-term growth activities?
Okay.
What is that going to look like? Are we going to see another version of one to me taking money and not doing the projects? Or what are we going to see? That's the next challenge. That's
Mm.
whether it's sustainable or not. Sustainability will come in the form that we take this and retain the investment that we got, which means when we pursue an activity, we're going to see it to the finish line. And for how many years? We're yet to see that. And the saddest part of all these things, negotiations and sustainability, will depend on the political climate. Because now we spend half of the year just
Mm.
streamlining and ensuring financial discipline. And
Yeah.
now we're going to pursue revenue mobilization, which is the next step after what the Mahama administration has done. They have to look at aggressive revenue mobilization. And then they have to look at the both structural reforms. Then we have to diversify the economy. So all of these steps is going to lead to a lot of spending in the economy. So are we going to go back to the circle of, corruption where people will get access to funds to pursue projects and they don't do them? So that is where it gets critical.
Okay.
Okay. And
Yeah.
then until we can diversify, the city appreciation is going to be short lived because the moment we start activating and importing things for either project or consumption, the city is going to depreciate
Mm.
if we don't structurally reform on the other side to maintain the
Okay.
value of the city. So we have a lot of things going on that we have to put in a broader perspective and have an agenda of how we're gonna balance both hands. The left and the right needs to be balanced. As we
Yeah.
reduce in, the level of import, how much export can we have on the other side? So if you look at the China agreement, I'm not enthused about it because what do we produce anyway? So we basically giving China the opportunity to dump goods on us. That's
Yeah.
the whole thing. So they're the winner here. But let's fast forward 20 years from now. If we can put a lot of goods in the market, electronics, let's challenge them on electronics. Let's challenge them on technology, produce the goods, and see if they will let us drop it into the economy like they would
Yeah.
do to us. So the agreement, unfortunately, as it stands right now, no agreement favors Ghana except the raw commodities that we produce. Other than
Okay.
that, there's nothing beneficial coming to us yet.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Professor, basically, we have got to tackle corruption and mismanagement in our economy to achieve all of these objectives. But, Professor,
Mhm.
what strategies can Ghana implement to reduce dependency on external support in the future? Because you said that the China agreement isn't necessarily a win for us, but in the future, what strategies can we implement now that can reduce the dependency on external support?
Like I mentioned, we can look at the Rwanda's model, right, of fiscal discipline and aggressive revenue mobilization. So we have a whole informal sector of the economy that's not yet tapped in
Mm.
terms of revenue. And then we have a lot of loopholes in the existing structure of how we collect our taxes.
Okay.
Okay. So if we can use technology and close the loopholes, take all the middlemen and have the
Mm.
monies going straight to the government, then that alone will appreciate our revenue. And then we can do what Rwanda did with revenue mobilization by ensuring that some of the processes are streamlined with technology. And that alone improved the economy by 6.8%, where they were able to register businesses in less than 8 hours. And then provided incentive for informal sector to get into the economy, where they offered them a retirement package like a pension. So by you signing up to be formalized into the system, the government will match your contribution for a pension. You think the street vendors wouldn't contribute to the economy? They
Mm.
would.
Yeah.
And you gain revenue by them participating in the economy. So revenue mobilization is going to be key. And Rwanda's model seems to be something that stands out for me as I look at the models that have existed in terms of how you bring in informal sector into the formal sector.
Yeah.
Then we have to boldly restructure this small, what do you call it, state-owned enterprises and the public sector in general. All right. We must
Mm.
continue to look at some of the programs like the programs that takes up money, like the National Service Program. We saw the corruption in there. So we need to look at all these institutions and have
Mm.
an aggressive diversification of the economy. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Industrialization using the Vietnam model, where we will attract and retain investment, tech
Yeah.
hubs, strengthening institutions. And then, you know, we can have institutions and governance that will help us fight corruption sustainably. Maybe an independent model, like the ones I've been suggesting all along, will be a good one. All right. If you have an independent economic management, commission that will pursue all of these under their fold, because my proposal includes not only economic agenda, but also the the governance of our resources
Mm.
and have the ability to prosecute. And
Yeah.
these people are going to exist regardless of who's in power.
Mm.
On top of all of that is going to be our human capital investment. The tech hub, the technology has to be the driver of all of
Okay.
this.
Okay.
Yep.
Professor, you did mention about revenues and how revenues can contribute to the economy. We had this road tolls which was cancelled under the previous Akufo-Addo administration, but in some advanced countries, we noticed that these road tolls are not even taken manually; they are taken electronically. Can we introduce such policies here in Ghana, whereby we take the road tolls, but not necessarily manual, because the previous administration made a claim that with the manual collection of the tolls, the money isn't necessarily getting to the central government. So, how can Ghana strengthen its institutions to manage future economic shocks? Our institutions, how can we upgrade it? How can we manage it and ensure that whenever there is a policy to take revenue from the public, it is directly going to the government, but not squandered by some other third party.
So the way to do that is technology in the middle of everything. Some of these solutions to most of the things we see in Ghana as corruption can simply be, solved by engaging into technological solutions, either whether tax revenue or collection of tolls. We, like you mentioned, we have Easy Pass here in the United States. All right, everything is linked to the registration of the vehicle.
Okay.
Right. So this is as simple as it gets. Now we have the first step. We've taken the first step, which is the Ghana card. I don't know the details of the information that Ghana card holds, but if Ghana card is linked to the registration of a vehicle, then we know whose card that is. We should have the address on file. And as a condition, because our address system is not as robust as in United States over here, the
Mm.
condition of registering is to link your Momo account, for example, to uh, the Ghana card and the registration of your vehicle.
Mm.
And that you should pre-authorize the deduction of a toll, say 1 Ghana city, from your Momo account each time you go through our tollway. This is a technology solution that we can easily implement with nobody involved. And the money from your Momo account to the government's Momo, whoever the ministry is, to government's Momo, no person involved. We can
Mm.
simply streamline this. This is one simple solution from my head. I haven't even started to think about it, but this is something we can do just off the back. So we can, with Ghana Card existence, we can leverage Ghana Card to do so many things and take all the middlemen out of the equation when it comes to really implementing solutions that will drive revenue mobilization. So
Okay.
this is very, very important. If we are to ensure that everything that we trying to do is sustainable, is to imbibe technology in everything we do.
Mm.
The technology is here. We're not going to be the first one to have an e-toll gate. There's tollway everywhere. Every country has a different version. In the United
Yeah.
States, every state has a different version of Easy Pass. All right, but it's all interconnected and linked to the registrant of the vehicle. All right. If there's no
Yeah.
address system that we can trace, then at least we have a Momo account. So if you don't have a Momo account, you can register a vehicle
There you go. Yeah.
because we know that you're gonna one way or the other go through the tollway. If you're gonna go through the tollway, then we should have an account that we can pull money from without necessarily send you a letter. So we
Mm.
will be ahead of the US in terms of doing this because in the US we get a mail, which to me should be outdated. We don't need a
Yeah.
mail. Just have the registration tied to an account and just pull the money out. So it's as simple as that. But
Mm.
Ghana, that's why I always say when I talk about Ghana, I say we have the advantage of backwardness. We're coming in so late.
Mm.
We can
Yeah.
learn from the lessons of the people that have been here before us and their failures. We can learn from the failures and incorporate that as a solution to where we're trying to go. So
Mm.
there's no reason for us to not accelerate our growth if we are serious.
Yeah. Professor, thank you very much for your insight and explanation for this topic and this question. It has been very insightful discussion so far, but you have mentioned something about diversification to diversify the economy. Professor, for the average Ghanaian watching us right now, literally, what does that really mean? What sectors of the economy offers the best opportunity for sustainable economic diversification? Because someone might hear you saying diversify the economy, but what does that really mean?
What it basically means is, in simple terms, instead of selling cocoa beans in the raw state, why don't we sell chocolate? Be
Mm,
number one chocolate producer in the world
yeah.
because we have the basic raw material. Instead of sending the gold bars to Dubai, why don't we become the ones that refine and sell jewelry and have a gold souk in Dubai brought into Ghana? That's basic diversification.
Okay.
All right. Why does Dubai has a gold souk and they don't have a single mineral
Go.
resource
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
gold in Dubai? And we have the mineral, but we don't have the gold souk. They have a gold market. That's what souk means, market. So they have the gold market, but we don't have the gold market in Ghana. All we have is pits, holes on the ground to show for our
Mm,
gold. We don't even have an economy. We don't even have Obuasi being the beautiful city in the country yet. And yet they've provided gold for so many years.
yeah.
That is mind-boggling if you think about it. A city that has offered Ghana everything we're talking about, all this excitement about city appreciation, all of that is as a result of gold refinery revenue that we got coming in. But what do we have to show for it? We don't
Mm,
have a single city that looks like the gold giver. We need to see Obuasi looking the most beautiful city in Ghana because it gives us all we needed ever thought. So until we diversify, it's going to be the same narrative. The money will come, and if we don't diversify, the money will disappear because we're not
mm,
doing anything with the money until we can move it to the step further and have
mm.
everybody come in here for finished goods, not raw materials. So that's what diversification means. You
Okay.
diversify, you add value to the process. If it's agriculture, why don't we make tomato paste? Burkina is selling tomato paste right now in cans. They're producing in cans. Why are
Mm,
we not there yet? We
yeah.
took the same amount of money and dug a hole $12 million. They took $12 million and built a factory. So that's the two stories that we have in Ghana. Ghana, nothing, $12 million, somebody's pocket. Burkina Faso, $12 million turned into a factory. So that's
Mm,
our diversification story. One
okay.
country is doing it, one country is just squandering the money.
Mm, yeah. Professor, thank you very much. And we have been going to the IMF for a very long time since the Kufuor administration, the Mills Mahama administration, and the Akufo-Addo administration. For the average Ghanaian watching us right now, how has the our debt crisis affected unemployment, livelihood, and inflation. Is there any direct correlation between the two? Because people hear that Ghana is going to the IMF, but they don't necessarily care because I don't think they even understand the policy or the agreement. But is there any direct correlation between our unemployment, our inflation, and our debt crisis? Because I remember one of their, I think, was it the Kufuor administration, the IMF demanded him to reduce the civil servants. So, Professor, explain to our viewers how the IMF or our debt crisis is correlated to our unemployment and inflation.
All right. So the debt crisis, which means every money we bring in, the debt crisis, debt to GDP ratio, everything we try to do in the economy in terms of gains, whether revenue or otherwise, we try to use it to service debts, which takes away from how much we're able to create in terms of opportunities for the citizen. So that's
Oh,
your employment situation right there. So
yeah.
when the government doesn't have room to pursue economic activity because of servicing the debt, it takes
Mm,
away from what he can do for the citizens in terms of offering them jobs, which is what usually comes with the IMF solutions because it's all about tightening the belt. When IMF comes, you tightening your belt. Whether you
mm,
do some layoff because they think it's an expense that's not needed, even though even for what do you call it, social responsibility, you
yeah.
shouldn't be cutting citizens' job. But IMF doesn't care about that. That's why I said IMF goal is not the Ghanaian citizen. IMF goal is the books, to balance the books. So
Mm,
we have two scenarios going on. You as a political leader or Ghana government is looking to serve your people, the Ghanaian citizen.
yeah.
IMF is looking to serve the books and make the investors happy. So we have two contradicting objectives, where one is looking for the citizen, the other one is not looking at the Ghanaian citizen. He's looking at the books and the investors, people that are going to come and invest and take advantage of your situation. That's basically what they're doing. So until
Yeah.
we realize that we don't have mutual beneficial approach to solving our problem, then we will never wake up to the realities. Each time they come in, it's the citizen that suffers. Whether they tell you to increase your fuel, that's what we did. When they came in, inflation was so up because they're taken away from how much you are able to, uh, do for your citizens. So that means it's going to erode the purchasing power. So inflation is going to go up. They're pushing the cost of living beyond the reach of ordinary citizens. That's what they do. So these are all indications of what IMF has on each time they come in. Subsidies were taken out. When subsidies were taken out in agriculture in 1980s, what happened? Prices of food goes up. That's inflation. You cannot eat. When they
Yeah.
come in, lay off. That's people getting laid off. Where they're gonna
Yeah.
eat, they don't care.
Mm,
And then recently, electricity tariffs. So you can cite all examples of IMF initiatives and what it led to a citizen. It's the suffering that gets worsened by their presence in the name of solving our economic problem. All they're trying
oh,
to do is to balance the book, to make the books look good. We're not interested in the numbers. We
mm,
should be, as a social responsibility, the government's social responsibility, to make sure that the Ghanaian citizens is taken care of. If that's the responsibility, then we should find partners that will look at things the same way we're looking at things, not the way IMF is looking at things, unfortunately.
okay. Professor, I think we have to take some questions from our viewers at the moment. There are questions for us on the show right now. Saif Maldini says, I like your program. He says he's watching us from the US. Thank you very much for your contribution. Anas Emiyari says, so what are the differences between diversification and domestication? Professor, this is a question to you. One of our
Okay.
viewers said, what are the differences between diversify and domestication? Yeah, sorry. Diversify and domestication. So, Professor, can you answer his question on the show, or do we have to proceed and we'll come back to the question later?
Yeah, okay. So diversification is a process of adding value to the goods that we already producing with the aim of exporting it as well, not only consuming locally, but exporting everything as well. Domestication, on the other hand, is trying to do solve our own problems within. We're only looking within. We're not looking or interested in trying to, open ourselves up to competition, because that means you are solving your problems and you actually stopping import into the scenario. So when you
Yeah.
stop import and you're trying to solve your problem, like the first approach that Burkina did with rice, they were domesticating their approach where they start exporting
Mm.
rice. They wanted to ensure that they're not importing rice and they're not exporting, which means they are domesticating the rice
Okay.
production. So they're
Okay.
going to produce and consume until they feel like they're good enough to open up. If you open up, then you open up to competition. So the demand and supply will then come in. That's diversification. Diversification involves the market, external market. But domestication doesn't allow external influence in your market. So you
Mm.
produce within, you consume within your country, within the boundaries of your country, and no competition is coming in. All right. So that is the difference. But when you are exporting after production, like I was saying about cocoa, we're gonna
Mm.
be exposed to this demand and supply, dynamics of the market. Should we add value to cocoa production and produce gold? What do you call it? Chocolate.
Okay. Okay.
All right. When we produce chocolate, there's going to be Belgium producing chocolate. There's going to be other countries producing. Where do we stand? But we are diversifying. So we're
Mm.
going to face the world prices and the competition of demand and supply on diversification. But on
Okay.
domestication, there is no challenges. You just close in your shores and then try to solve your own problems within. Yes.
Okay. Okay, Professor, thank you very much. NSME, I thank you for your question. He was the one who asked about the diversify and domestication. Okay, Anas Emiyari also said, beautiful program, excellent analysis. Thank you very much. Channel viewers, do like, share, and leave your comments as well. I think Professor has been really excellent on his submissions and explanations and insight on the program. Professor, so at the moment, what is the government roadmap beyond the IMF support program?
Uh, the government's roadmap beyond IMF support will involve a sustained commitment to unwavering fiscal discipline, all right, which I said should be natural within our structures. We don't need IMF to tell us that. We see what Muhammad is doing. So if we have a leader like that, and we have a couple coming after him, because the situation we have is not what Muhammad does today, it's what happens after Muhammad. And that's where my fear is about Ghana. The fact that if this physical discipline that we have and the structural reforms that he's pursuing is not continuing, then how can we evolve beyond IMF? So we need fiscal discipline, both structural reforms, economic diversification that will attract and retain investment. So we need to strengthen our institutions and governance, which brings me to my point. Until we can have a structure that is independent of our political calendar to carry on the gains of Mahama administration and whoever comes that is looking at things the same way, then I don't see a path beyond IMF, honestly, because it's been 68 years since independence. And somehow, some way, we always find ourselves in their hands. So what is the way beyond that? Is to ensure that we're not doing the same thing and expecting a different result. So the pathway is to ensure that we can have a structure in place that will ensure continuity of everything that this administration is doing that will go beyond their term, so we can start seeing the next step. Because right now, in as much as we're all excited about what is happening today in the environment, all right, I just want to see the longer term. Where are we going to go? after 4 years or 3.5 years after Muhammad administration.
Mm.
Nobody knows that because we don't have the structures to ensure that. We seen what we seen is because one man has decided I'm gonna try to do the right thing. So if that guy gets out of the equation, do we have a system in place that will ensure this continues? The answer is no, because 68 years has been no.
Mm.
So until we can agree that what we experiencing is not a system, it's just the desire of one person to do the right thing. And bringing a system that is independent of somebody like Muhammad, independent of anyone. But then we can achieve sustainable growth and financial discipline, economic diversification. We continue to structure, reform our systems, all right, and ensure that the human capital and social protection is within the system. Because each time you go into the IMF hands, forget about social protection. You're
Mm.
actually gonna have a social cost, not a protection. So until we can have that system,
Mm.
which ensures that, I'm afraid there's no way beyond that.
Okay. Professor, there is a question from Anes MERI, but before that, anyone wanting to call, kindly leave your comment at the moment. We are having a technical issue with the call in, so leave your comment on the show and we will address it. Address it to Professor, and Professor will also answer you back. So we do really apologize for the call in. There was a technical issue, but you can leave your comment at the comment section, so we will all contribute in the show together. Professor Anes MERI says, so what you mean? So you mean what Mahama is doing with the economy now is doing the right thing? Are we safe with his policies and economic strategies? This is a question from Anes Emiari. It says that are we safe with President Mahama's economic strategies? Because I think he heard you saying that okay, what Mahama is doing now is effective, but what comes after Mahama is the question in focus. So the question here is: are we safe with his policies and economic strategies?
Yeah, economic strategies and policies, so far so good. I don't want us to get carried away. I think it's the baby steps that I'm appreciating. The fact that we came from a really dark times, right?
Yeah.
From what we saw in the previous administration, then they had COVID, which came and messed up a lot of things, and then they tried to recover. And then we kind of got to where we are before the Mahama administration came in.
Mm.
So we have to give credit where credit is due. They have set up a foundation for us to move to the next level. And what they've done so far is a good policy thinking that I would assume they're doing. But we haven't done anything. It's only 6 months. So don't get carried away with the initiatives that we've seen. None of the initiative has yielded a single dollar into the economy yet. So there's nothing to show for. No results yet. But intentions, actions should be, applauded where it needs to be, waiting for the results to kick in. All right. So the policies are in the right direction. We have financial discipline, it looks like. All right. Even though we need to spend to move forward. So they haven't been spending as great as they should. So they are very careful about what to spend. And then they have code of conduct. They have a lot of initiatives that we mentioned. So that's a good baby steps. All right. They're on the right track, to be honest. But the problem is so big that somebody will have to be ready to take it a step further. So, in terms of are they on the right track, I would say yes, given where we came from. All right. Because nobody wants to see how we were doing things some 4 years ago. Nobody wants that, or even last year. You all saw the impunity that was in the system about public offices. People taking our money and just throwing it in our face with no regard to our feelings. And today we have a different system. So we have to applaud that. All right. We have a different system where it seems like the leader is very serious about what he expects of his a team. So we have to give credit where credit is due, with the hope that this will translate into something bigger. It's only
Oh,
6 months, so don't get carried away. I'm very careful about saying that yes, they've turned things around. Nothing has been turned around. We just have a stability, a foundation on which we can do, you know, better. Yes.
okay. Professor, there is another question from Sheikh Redwan Abdullah Guna. Sheikh, wherever you are, a very good evening to you. He says that what's the precautionary measures for the government should in case the Middle East conflict takes up to a year? I think the Middle East conflict is not spoken about enough because we do realize that the war between Iran and Israel could potentially lead to a global economic catastrophe because there is a route whereby whenever it is attacked, oil prices will skyrocket. And I think there are reports and people have started speculating about it. So Sheikh is asking that what is the precautionary measures for the government to adapt or put in place should in case the Middle East conflict escalate further up to a year.
Yeah, so the precautionary measure will be to look at alternative sources of fuel, all right, as it exists today. So whatever agreement we have, wherever we seeking oil from, I think it's time for us to start looking at alternatives, okay? And then long term is always a lesson. You see, this is what we've been talking about: diversification, diversification. Diversification of our oil will be to refine it. So I don't know why we haven't thought about this. Even US as it stands today is always looking at alternatives for oil. What did they do? They have reserves that you cannot even think about. The question is, do we have reserves? Okay, oil reserves. They buy oil just to reserve it in cases of war like this, in cases of shortage like that. They activated, I told you the last time I was on the program, it was once activated during COVID, where we saw, the oil reserves being activated to reduce the prices of oil in the American economy, because the prices were soaring, and Biden administration activate the use of oil reserves. So this is a country that's forward thinking. That's the kind of approach I want to see in Ghana, where we look at where we are today and don't expose ourselves to the vulnerabilities in the external world. So we have to seek alternatives of, where our oil is coming from or our gas or fuel is coming from. That has to be something that is on the table right now that the government is thinking about, because nobody knows the direction of this war and where it's going to go. So we
Yeah,
have to be proactive in seeking alternative sources of fuel. All right. And then there has always been a diversification issue of renewable energy, alternative energy, solar. All these things are here that we never activated. So as you can see, this work can be broad, it can be short, it could be longer. So
yeah,
we have to start bringing everything into the discussion. Okay, this is where we are. Are we gonna sit and wait until we have fuel shortage, or are we gonna seek alternatives? And in the meantime, as we seeking alternatives, can we also expand on diversifying the sources, all right, of fuel and energy? There has to be a whole cohesive, discussion about a solution,
mm,
which is something we talked about the last time we spoke. We talked about alternative energy. So
yeah,
it hasn't been, now it's more pronounced in terms of what we need to do that we haven't done for several years. So let's seek alternatives, so we're not exposed to these shocks.
mm,
And then secondly, let's think about diversifying. What can we do in the short run, in the long run? And
mm.
how do we reduce our energy dependence externally?
Okay.
So that's
Uh,
the way we can achieve that.
yeah, Professor, thank you very much. I think we are having a connectivity issue with Professor's broadcast, but looking at the time, I think we're Professor right now. I would like to switch to our local dialect for the benefit of those who are watching who do not necessarily understand the English language. So, Professor, in short term or in summary, today's program, I would like you to summarize it to our viewers who are watching us in the Hausa dialect.
All right. Masu sauraron mu barkanmu da yau, barkanmu da sallah. Ina jin mun je off air wayansu kwanuka kadan. To alhamdulillah Allah ya komo da mu kuma mun same ku, ina fatan kowa na lafiya. To yau dai mun tattauna kan yanda za mu tafiyar da lamuranmu mu samu ci gaba inda ya fi inda muke. Yanzu dai mun ga inda muka kai. Sabon administration nan na Mahama ya kawo muna waton confidence cikin economy inda kowa ke ganin kamar da alaman mun juya abin. To mun tattauna kan ya za mu samu tabbacin wannan dama da muka samu kanmu na sake lamurra. Shine muka duba wayansu ababa kaman banda sadda kayukan da muke sai ko abin nan kayan da muke producing dinsa Ghana, banda sadda su a the primary state watan kenan sanda aka samo su kasa ko kuma da ake samo su duka, me za mu yi mu kara amfanin shi saboda mu yi mu sayar shi da zai kawo mana amfani mai dimbin yawa. To shi muka tattauna, sannan muka duba wasu ababa kuma da za a iya kara banda wa'annan da zai kawo muna tabbacin samun amfanin baiwan da Allah ya mana. Dan dai mun san dai Allah ya mana baiwa Ghana, to har yanzu ba mu ci amfanin wannan baiwan ba. To akwai ababa da yawa, wayansu ababan halayyanmu ne, wayansu kuma shi structure din ko system da muke da shi bai ba mu daman cin amfanin shi ba. To shi muka tattauna da fatan cewa mun doki wani karatu cikin tattaunawanmu mu fara yi da juna gaskiya a tabbacin cewa abin na har yanzu fa an juya kwanan ne amma ba mu kama hanyar ba tukunna, so da sauran aiki. To inda muka ajiye kenan, da fatan mun dawo mu ci gaba da tattaunawa yadda za mu samu kamun luddan yadda ya kamata insha Allah.
Okay. Professor, thank you very much for your submission and your insight on this show. So, Professor, look, we are looking at the time factor. We don't have much time left. So, what is your final submission on our discussion on our topic for today? Restoring macroeconomic stability and building resilience. We did look at the path beyond Ghana's debt restructuring and IMF support. So, what is your final submission?
I want us to imagine a Ghana where the city is not just stable, but a symbol of our economic prowess, where inflation is not a burden, but a distant memory. I want us to imagine a Ghana where our young people will find abundant opportunities, where our businesses will thrive on a level playing field, and where innovation is celebrated as the bedrock of our future. I want us to imagine a Ghana that stands on a beacon of economic resilience, good governance, and prosperity, not just in Africa, but globally. This vision is not a mirage. It is within our grasp, and the recent positive development indicate that we firmly on the right track thanks to deliberate and sustained action. Thank you.
Okay. Dear cherished viewers, we'll bring an end to our show for today. We did have a discussion with Professor Abbas. Thank you very much for your time and your insight on this program. We do really appreciate your contribution. It is really insightful and also educative for the viewers and for the average Ghanaian watching the show. Stay tuned on the Economic Forum show next week at the same time. Until next time, it is bye for now.
Thank you.